All right, next up is our last one. We have Mbawula Chat. That's going to take place. Ubulelani and Mr. Masiza, if they can come on stage. He's a legend, this one. Legend. Let's put our hands together for Mr. Masiza. An entrepreneur, business leader, CEO of EmpowaWorx, qualification from VETS, among other institutions, project management, a real community leader, a visionary and a builder. Come on, Orange Farm, let's stand up. Orange Farm. Let's honor him. You'll find that more Godman that's doing amazing work, Orange Farm, a real community builder. Thank you so much, sir. Good to see you.
Dumela auslizi mogala.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. This is the second last segment or part of our segment today, which is the Mbawula Chat. Now, Mbawula Chat is when we talk to a local game changer, businessman, and someone who's really just, not necessarily doing amazing community work, but it's always amazing when you see that being done at such a massive scale, right? And none other than the individual that most of the people in the room know, someone I really respect, having met him a number of years ago, and a very humble gentleman. Actually, let's just give him another round of applause, man. Just another. So we'll pretend we don't know you.
No.
We've never seen you anywhere. You're not from Orange Farm. We don't know you. Introduce yourself. Who is Simphiwe?
Okay.
Where is he from? And then I'll follow up with the rest of the questions.
Good, okay. Sanbonan, I must say it's such a privilege ukubuya ngizokhuluma nabantu baseKasi. It's a humbling experience until this time. People, but it's triple M today. Kimikiti, Kimanyalo, Kimafu. But you guys who decided to be here because you're serious about your testing, and I think because of that, give yourself a round of applause. And also, the supporters or the sponsors. I only know Auslize Mokhale from Nedbank, also the Nedbank team. The founder or the chair, the president of TIA, Ndadebulelane. Thank you for also to just to invite me and the rest of other entrepreneurs. Okay. I know there's a saying that says if there's no rush in Russia, no hurry in Harare. We shouldn't rush and hire in South Africa, because in the days of our lives we need to be bold and beautiful, so we can go in the wild and find the young and restless and help them to find the need isitingo, so they can become a generation that will fight scandal. And that's how we create a rhythm city. No, okay, let's go to I was born in Eastern Cape. And then I moved, I stayed go Soweto. Then my mom and I and my siblings, we then moved to Mshengu Valley. And then if you know, Orange Farm, it's abantu abahlala lana, abaningi bakhona babuya eMshengu Valley Soweto. And thina sabaleka ngoba it was during isikhathi violence, if you remember during Inkatha. And then we decided, actually I didn't want to come to Orange Farm, but eventually I came to Orange Farm. Marangafika like Orange Farm, clever, like the rest of other guys I will be Soweto. And then because of my spirituality, obviously I met Christ, which I'm proud of. And then that's where life yami yaguquka. And then I started to pursue what God has engineered for me. But the long and short, born in Eastern Cape, grew up in Soweto, ended up in Orange Farm, and my journey started in Orange Farm in terms of entrepreneurship and pursuing my career, as a professional, but also as an entrepreneur.
When you take a moment and you look back at your life, I don't know if you have those moments, right? When you take stock, I mean, it's the end of the year, but it's not just to necessarily take stock of the year, but when you take a stock and you look back at your life, was this always the plan? And if it wasn't, how did it sort of unfold itself over the years?
Strange enough, this was the plan. 26 years ago, I always had a dream. And that's why there's a saying that says, and I normally say to people that your future is a direct proportion of your thoughts. That if you want to reinvent your destiny, just re-engineer the way you think. I always had a dream to be an entrepreneur. Actually, I had two dreams. Because, when we moved to Lana, and my story is the same as the story of the rest of us, or most of us. And I don't want to sound like a broken record. But actually, before getting a tutor, I shared a space like Ejabulid, and then I went to a tutor. And then, three of us were Rumini, if you go extension 6, and all of us were dreams. One of my friends who international relations, the other one is a preacher, because initially I wanted to be a preacher, or I wanted to be an evangelist. But when I saw Dr. David Mlapo giving inspirational lectures, it resonated with me. And I said, look, this is what I can do. And immediately, two things that I wanted to achieve. That was 26 years, 26 years ago. I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I also wanted to be a keynote speaker or an inspirational speaker, and both of them I've achieved. I used to do a lot of motivational talks around Mokokas, because that's where I had to sharpen my saw. And then I went to corporate, and then I got bored. And then I think almost 7 years ago, I stopped doing motivational talks. Now I'm owning a company that represent almost 200 leading speakers in the country. Because now I'm behind the scenes and I'm pushing black talent, to deliver content to different spaces, But it was, I've always had this, that, and I was very clear that, when I succeed, if I will succeed, and I know success is very relative and proportional, that I will always extend my hand or a hand to the brother and the sister. And that's what I do a lot of work in Orange Farm. I run a tournament that's called Masiza tournament. We put a lot of funds. We support Abokoko like us. We support young people. Actually, we also run not a feeding scheme, but where we do lunch for almost 100 young people with my daughter. My daughter, her name, she's called Scarlett. She's an influencer. Some of you might know her, or Mpomi. And we run something that called Scarlet Cares. And we support a number of other people. We may not rave about it, because I'm one person that even to my team, I always said, when you support a struggling person, don't get glory out of that. And sometimes as companies we could be, ruthless, where, we give somebody 200,000 or we build a small house, and we spend 2 million just to promote that we've built a house of 200,000. And I normally say to people that, do it in your own corner, and uNkulunkulu ngendlela yakhe, he will then reward you. But we do a lot of work. And I guess to answer your question, I wanted to be both, because, and I knew that if I can, succeed with the little that I have, I will then make sure that I distribute it to some of the young people that are encountering some of the challenges that I had.
So in sort of unpacking that journey, you've always sort of seen yourself being an entrepreneur. Did you work anywhere?
Yes.
Let's talk about that.
Let's talk about that. Yeah,
those building blocks.
Yeah, I've worked for a company called ICANN Foundation. My first job was I worked for Dr. David Mlapo. That was 96. Immediately after my standard 10, now they're called grade 12. And I was a coordinator at ICANN Foundation based in Orange Farm. And then 98, I then moved straight to business. Then I started a company called, no, actually I didn't start a company. It was during the advent year BEE. You know, when BEE started, I was then recruited to MD a company called Riahona Project Management Company. And I was given 51%, shareholding, remember those structures. And we ran a number of, I was involved in a number of projects. But I've worked, I know how to report emsebenzini, I know how, and then immediately after then, my last stint, I know that I'm accelerating. My last stint, I worked for a company called Gijima AST. I was a GM there for, I didn't stay there because I think I was there for 6 months. Then I then said, look, I'm not cut for this. Immediately I started EmpowaWorx. It was not called EmpowaWorx then when I started. It was called Simphiwe Do It and Consulting, because it was more inspirational talks, personal development programs. And then I moved, then we made a transition almost, how old is my daughter? Almost 19 years ago, when I moved into marketing and comm space. And then I then started, changed the name to EmpowaWorx,
What are some of the lessons you've learned along the way that you've sort of held on to?
Yeah, I think there's a music. I don't know what it's deliberate. Oh, it's outside. Okay, sorry. You're saying what are some of the?
So what are some of the lessons I've just asked the team to,
Okay.
What are some of the lessons you've learned along the way that you've kept till today? Whether it was a piece of advice, whether it was a book you read.
Yeah. For me, two things, because I can share. One thing is that value relationships, and don't have relationships because you want to get something from somebody. Be genuine. I have a lot of people that I know that CEOs of listed companies, and most of them for the past 15 years I've known them. I've never asked them a thing. Because I believe that if we're gonna do business, it has to be organic. It must not because, I'm a thorn in their flesh, and I've done that and I'm saying to you because as much as we have an incredible product, people they do business with people they trust and they connect with, and sometimes it's so worse in the government space that sometimes they will take your idea and give it to somebody that they relate with. And that's a sad part. Sometimes, and I like the brother was talking now before me. There was a time in, I think 2 years, before COVID, there was a time in my life when I looked at people and I said, you guys, you are tendering, and then, the tendering system is corrupt. I used to say that. And a friend of mine said to me, have you tendered? And I said, no, I'm not tendered. I said, no, then shut up. Because until you get inside the system, then you can have an opinion. And then I called my team. I said to my team, guys, here's the target. I want us, monthly to deliver up to 25 tenders. Cumulatively, collectively, we then submitted up to 140 tenders. To various government agencies and departments. And out of 140 tenders, we had 3 responses that says no. We only got 1 tender, but not big tender, small tender. The rest we didn't get any positive response. I wanna tell why. And most of the ideas that are implemented by most of those agencies, you can tell that these are our ideas. With the tagline, the strategy, the digital content around it. Nobody isn't doing I think what I'm trying to say is, and I know that's the wrong part, but people do business with people that they trust and they connect with. For me, is relationships. The second thing that from the book you are saying, there's a book that I read, it's called Crucible Experiences of Leadership. Professor Thomas described leadership it says leadership, it's about two things. It's about performing art. It says, as you perform, you practice. As you practice, you perform. Let me give an example. An artist, maga performer, or ya practice for the next session. You know, maga perform, maga practice, or ya perform. He said, leadership, you're not going to get to a stage where you are perfect. And I'm saying to you as an entrepreneur, Goti, you'll continue to make mistakes. But continue to make new mistakes, don't make the same mistakes. And I always say to my kids, to say, Magayan's a mistake or I pull something, no matter how expensive, we are complaining it, babes, you have a right to make a mistake. But don't make the same mistake. The third thing, and I'm closing now so I can talk until, always attribute intelligence to your competitor. Because once you think that you are the best thing that has happened to peanut butter, and then was over caught up with mediocrity, was over complacence. You know, as Sansui says, always attribute intelligence to the person sitting next to you. Because in that way, you begin to perfect yourself, you work your fingers to the bone, you bend the midnight oil, and then you perfect the art of doing whatever that you're doing. The last one, then I'm done. Sorry, I know that I behave like a preacher. Because preacher, they say I'm done, I'm finishing. This is the last one. There's a guy, the guy who I forgot his name. He says, when you meet with people, you must look for three things. Or when you want to bring people in your ecosystem or in your circle, look for three things. One, look for intelligence, and then secondly, look for energy, and thirdly, look for integrity. And he says, if they don't possess the latter, disregard them. Because no matter how energetic, whether they have a good energy, they have intelligence, but if they don't have integrity, so don't even consider them. And those are some of the things that, as an entrepreneur, you need to make sure that you look for. You look for integrity. You look for relationships. But over and above, you understand that people do business with people that they trust. So.
No, thank you so much. You know, one of the things I like, right, that you mentioned, and I was just taking notes here, around relationships. Yeah. So you had these relationships with all these individuals, but you never pressed them. You kept them genuine. How did you balance that? Because majority of the time, especially when you're an entrepreneur, you walk into a room and the moment they say, here's Mang from Nedbank, everyone floods to that Mang. But it's not a genuine connection. So I think my question then is, how then do we then better manage delaying the gratification, actually leaving here and building genuine relationships so that it's not transactional?
Yeah.
Because most of the time it's transactional.
Yeah, it has to, you have to balance that. There are people that you know that they're looking for good ideas. And I like what the friend, the guy, my colleague who just presented. There's enough money or enough capital, but what is lacking? Ideas. But for me is, if you are here, and then there's Bulelane, and you think that Bulelane will connect you to the right person, there's nothing wrong to go to Bulelane and present your idea. Are we all together? But there's everything wrong for you to be a thorn in his flesh. When umfonela nangabo 11 and nangabo 12 ebusuku. You know, because now you're bordering between ukuhasela and ukuharasa. Are we all together, colleagues? I think we need to. Let me give a simple example. Kunokuthi mafike eKasa ne uzabata aphiwe angifake nami yabona. Mara ngithi ngokufaka kuphi yathami? Angifake la EmpowaWorx. Uzokwenzani? Noba ngaklina aphiwe. Mara sinama cleaners yabona nasivalela manje. Yena ngoba oromonye afike kwathi ayazi aphiwe. Ekuyabheda man, kuyabheda. Yazi life ifana njenga-arch. Kanjani angazi yathami. But mamela aphiwe. If you have a good idea, yena if a business idea ngicela ungigaye yona yabona. And the issue is that, you know, the reality, sorry, if I have a business idea, why must I give it to you and not give it to Lefa? Lefa is my younger brother. And what I'm trying to say, and I know that I'm being hard to go much to Gucci, you know, people will only support you, especially if you're pestering them or you're hustling them. If you carry an idea that you have done your own research, you have done your own benchmarking, and then you come to me and say, POS, I think this is bankable. I want to do this. Then you're talking. But the other thing, which is the last thing, this is a disturbing, and let me say this. You know, for a living, I put people together. That's what I do for a living. I put people together. I always, you know, put entrepreneurs, you know, imagine. That's what I do for a living, and I enjoy doing it. I do it in my house. I do it in Orange Farm. I do it at officing. I do it throughout the, you know, the country. But there's this thing that sometimes is a thorn in my flesh. You bring Usis Lizzy, you bring Ubulelane, or letter Romeo there. And you know what, these are the people that will connect you to your destiny. Kumnand, when you oppose her, there's nothing wrong about that. 2 days later, ufonela mena, Masiza anka number Lizi. Kanja anatam. Usis Lizzy begeda, Ubulelane begeda. I must become your extended marketing or sales guys, and yet I brought those guys Lapokon. I would understand if you are saying with Nyampelela, you know, Angataga Ngazi, Ngarunkai context. It's a different story. You understand what I'm saying? I don't know what I'm.
No, I think you've give him a round of applause.
Yeah. Sorry for that. Yeah.
So just a couple more questions, just 4 more questions.
Okay.
I look at you, you don't look like struggles, you don't look like you've been through tough times. And that's the thing about people who've been able to perfect the art of, you know, building and not looking like they're problems or they're challenges. You know, they make difficult things seem easy, and in the process of making difficult things seem easy, you know, I think in our foolery, because when we perceive them, they look so perfect, we don't think that they've had any struggles. Have you had? And what do those look like? What were some of your low moments in business?
No, I had struggles, my friend. I'm writing a book now about my journey. You know, when I started, I was an MD of Riachon. I was 22 years. And I think I came to Orange Farm 3 times. You know, being bankrupt 3 times. You know, I had a room like Orange Farm, at least now, you know, gonna shower nyana. If it's into the Mosheg, at least, shower. But I was bankrupt 3 times as an entrepreneur. I was, you know, the office where I was, I had a sheriff coming to my office more than 3 times to come and attach from different suppliers. And it was the same, I remember it was the same sheriff who came and said, "It's you again, Mrs." I said, "Come, man, let's have a chat." They said, "No, you know, I'm going to undervalue your assets so that at least, you know, the provider doesn't think that you are liquid." But we have gone through this. You know, we've gone through, you know, where you owe SARS, and you have to pay a lump sum. But my philosophy is I've always said this philosophy that even in winter, you don't burn your furniture to make fire. You know, you don't give up. For me, I always had resilience. I had foresight. I knew that all things come to an end. There's a book that I was reading that says, the title of the book talks about ending well. It says, all things come to an end. You know, what you're going through, it will come to an end. You know, including those who are married, the Bible says, until death do us apart. There's nothing permanent under the sun. And I had those struggles. You know, I grew up in a shack like the rest of us. Grew up in a one room where you know, but in the midst of that, I had a dream. And that's why I'm saying to you guys, you are in a right environment. My advice to you, dream and dream big. When you are young, you have an added advantage because you can call anyone. You know, I think when we had my public phones were Telkom, I used to hassle a gentleman by the name of Peter Vundla, head boys. Peter Vundla then became, He became my mentor, and I had an incredible journey. And because I would call him, he will say to me, "Call me at 12." I'll call him at 12. Say, "Masiza, no, call me at 5. I'll call him at 5. He would say, "Send me an email," or "Send him an email." I remember when they said, "Hey man, I've given up. I think come to my office." It was at AMB, African Merchant Bank. And then we'll drive from AMB, we'll put me in his 7 Series, we'll go to Wandi's, and then we'll enjoy food. And then my perspective started to change. You know, to say, at least manje, ngihamba ngemoto, another screen. You know that screen there? Cooler one day, ngifuna uhamba ngemoto and a screen. You know, because sometimes it's an environment, it's an ecosystem. You need to find yourself in a different environment. Because fana nobuhle, khona lapho uthi bongena khona ubona ukuthi yabona la nyababa ngopelepele. But if you're going to limit ubuhle bakho lana uhambe, methi uhamba uphume uye eDubai ubona ukuthi ayimarila ngekho muhle la. Yena ala no bangathini la. Because everything in life is proportional. It's a relative. You understand? It's about the environment. You get what I'm saying? And all I'm saying is, I had those challenges, but I never gave up, Bulelan. I never gave up. You know, I'll even when I used to give motivational talks, I would talk about wealth and go back and have nothing. And I think that was maybe that's why I left motivational speaking, and now I represent the speakers, because they can talk about something that that they have. But I had challenges, like the rest of us. Yeah.
What kept you in the game? What kept you going and inspired to
my
first
kids.
bankruptcy you came back?
Yeah, my kids. I think for me, I wanted to give my kids a better prospects. I didn't want them to grow up the way I grew up.
Just 1 second, sir. Guys, if you can just keep it down for me. We're gonna wrap up just now.
For me, my kids, I didn't want my kids to grow up the way they, hustle. I didn't want my kids to hustle. Secondly, I knew that if I run my business and I run it well, it would give me 2 things. It will give me influence, and it will give me affluence. And sometimes you find that other guys, they will have influence and not affluence. Others, they will affluence and not influence. And I can decode that, one day when I give a talk. But I wanted both. Influence in the point that I could pick up a call and call somebody and say, "There's a young man here who's running this particular business. Please do help him." Affluence to a point where I could take from the little that I have and not feel that I've taken something and support somebody. You get what I'm saying? And that was my aspiration. The second thing that made me to pursue this journey was, and I normally say to people that there's a difference between personality and personhood. Personality, it's when people, they like you. But personhood, it's humanness. And I wanted, and it has always been my dream that when I succeed, people must be able to relate with me. If it happens, and I'm not saying I'm there, but I'm just saying, people that must not relate with you because of materialistic possession. As much as you have, but you must have that personhood. The other thing that I want to add was, I knew it, early in my journey, that I wanted to create a bit of equity around the Masiza surname. Because I always say to people that there are 2 things in life that you must always be aware of. There's what we call responsibility, and there's what we call recognition. Recognition is not responsibility. No responsibility is a recognition. Responsibility belongs to your name, but recognition belongs to your surname. Okay, let me explain to you. When we're about to graduate and we're about to be awarded a PhD degree, who gets more excited? Who works lyrical about that? It's your family. When you okay, you're going to have a bit of excitement, but ubano's boast doctor. It's your family. Because your responsibility and you burning their midnight oil is bringing equity to your surname and is bringing recognition to your surname. I think what I'm trying to say is that if you don't work hard, where as an entrepreneur, you are not contributing equity, to your surname. And therefore, you're not going to have the recognition, that you deserve. There are other surnames that when you mention that surname, it just opens doors. Not because of anything, because the ones that carried those surnames, they've worked their fingers to the bones. And I'm saying to you as an entrepreneur, and for me that was what has driven me, let me put so much energy so that hopefully one day my kids can carry and have equity around the Masiza surname.
Now, my second last question is, true to today's topic, which is access to funding. I can't help but sit there, I guess, as a facilitator, but assuming the position of an audience member. How did you, after all the downs, how did you manage to raise funds for different things? Because sometimes there's a narrative that says, I don't have money, so I can't start, the money's not enough, and the sort, so you never really start sometimes. How did you manage to do that just in as basic as way, so that when someone walks out of here, they don't think that, solutions are for the few, similar to what was said earlier on by Lebu?
Okay, let me, if there's one thing that you must, there's enough money. I know I'm going to sound like a broken record. Imali, iningi. Don't worry about imali. I'm serious, colleagues. Look, we run, entrepreneurship summits. Buladane comes and become. When we talk to a lot of, funders, people, they don't know where to invest the money because they're saying to me, Masiza, give us people with incredible ideas. That's all they're looking for. Therefore, we're not stressing a mali. You're not stressing any mali. Imali zoza. When stressing we go to perfect the idea onayo. Money will come. I can tell you now. Don't stress about that. Imali, look, I can say this over and over because imali iningi. There's too much money, but there's less ideas. Ungathathi idea kamngani wakho ngoba I normally say to people there are 4 eyes when it comes to entrepreneurship. There's what we call invention, where you start an idea and it becomes yours. There's innovation, where you perfect the idea. There's an investment where somebody scale it, and then there's idiocy, where somebody wants to replicate what we have started before. Which is the last phase. But all I'm saying to this, let me give Menaga, I was lucky because even when I started in business, I was an MD of a number of entities, not because of any qualification, but because of my relationships with some of the chairpersons of organizations. Because I was there, I was saying, here I am, this is my idea, this is how I can run entities. And this is what I'm saying, this is what I will ask. Once you have an idea, work on it. Maybe get a coach, talk to Bulelane, talk to people, but work on your idea and make sure that it is bankable. And then Uzobona, once you have that and then you're presenting to different funders, it's easy for them to fund you. But don't pursue imali before uqale business, then you are not going to start. I can tell you now. Mina ngaqala EmpowaWorx ngemali ama talks, because I used to do a lot of motivational talks. Bakuniki 10,000 lana after I talk, bakuniki 20, bakuniki 30 stina, after I talk, and then I'll take a bit of it, and then I will, put that, with business, because my credit record was not good, but, and I can safely say this, that I don't owe anybody. I run EmpowaWorx, it's self-funded, and I consider myself lucky that I'm a sole owner of the business, and I've been getting a lot of people that wants to buy the business, and because I'm very intuitive, and I said, look, I'm not ready, including some of our properties or some of our IPs that we have. There's one of the biggest organizations that came, they wanted to buy the Empower Youth and say, look, can you give us the IP? Tell us how much you want, we can give you the financials. After I've consulted with a few guys, including, internal, because it has to feel right. And I said, no, let me build this asset. Maybe after 2 or 3, 4, 5 years, in the fullness of time, we'll sell it. But I'm happy that the little, and again, it's also about fiscal discipline. And I'm not saying ungashayini ungadli imali yakho, but content dinner, abantu badla imali yabo, yet they can't afford to pay their staff. And I take serious offense. If you can go to EmpowaWorx, I've been with most of the team guys for almost 15 years. The only time where I couldn't pay them, it was when I paid them 80% of the salaries, because we were waiting for payment. But angeke mina ngishayine, ngihamba ngekusheshe, yet I can't even pay staff, salaries. And I'm saying you need to balance that. Sometimes you need to pay now and play later, But I hate lento with abantu shine and yet not taking care of the people that are creating value, which is your staff members. But I've never had funding, just a long shot of it,
My last question, I guess, would have been, what is your message? But I'll take that as the message and I'll ask you this.
Yeah.
Why is it so important for you? I mean, you drove all the way here, similarly to all the amazing speakers, the NetBank guys, all the partners really drove from an hour plus.
Yeah.
But you're consistently coming to the township.
Yeah.
A township that has no electricity.
Yeah.
You're consistently, come on, man. You're consistently supporting township-based businesses and very deliberate about it. The last interaction, you had said, this facility and this room that is here was built by this aluminium guy. Yeah. He couldn't do it properly, so I coached him. Yeah. This tiling here was done by 1, 2, 3. Yeah. The catering here is done by this specific gentleman. Yeah. And that spoke to me. Yeah. But, to have someone of your, I think in my view, influence, stature, consistently doing this and bringing his friends along to say, this is where we need to be. Number one, what is the significance of that, and what drives you to continuously do that? Yeah. That's my last.
And thank you, Mbawula. I believe in a dream of an African child. But for me, particularly, I also believe in young people by Orange Farm, because I grew up here. And I believe in the saying that says, don't burn the bridges, that as you rise, extend a hand to your brother. I grew up in Orange Farm. My brother still stays here, Olefa. But my intention, and I'm very intentional about Orange Farm. And we do a lot of programs. We do empower youth, some of you know. We're coming big next year. And last year when we came here, 50% of the cost were funded by us because, we went to different, sources. They didn't believe in it. It's only now that people are, they're waking up, to the concept of supporting, entrepreneurs and young people in the township setup. But I believe that if I don't do it, Bulelana, no one will. And I'm very deliberate that I bring most of the CEOs, most of the executives, the entrepreneurs this side, purely so that they can have an experience. Because sometimes, abantu bahlele esandini, and momchelang Orange Farm, Orange Farm, I remember I brought one of the ministers, and I wouldn't mention Lan, and she said to me, I never thought this place exists. I'm serious. I'm serious. God is my weakness. I said, I never thought it exists. A minister, but I thought that I played my role to bring her here, to have an experience. Hopefully, she'll bring programs and accelerate the future, Orange Farm. I can relate nabantu abasha base-Orange Farm ngoba bengumuntu omusha okhulele la Orange Farm. Yingako kuko konke engikwenzayo ngifuna ukuthi 80% of my resources ngiyifake la e-Orange Farm. And we're going to be doing a lot of things, from the company ngisebenzela bathi EmpowaWorx, but also my intention is to bring as many players as possible. Sikhona ukubashiya la e-Orange Farm abaqhubeke ngaloko engizobe ngikucalile or ekuzobe sikucalile, as EmpowaWorx. Let me close by saying that ukuthi iBhayibheli ithi, don't despise the days of small beginnings. Okay. Don't despise people that you meet. You don't know what was a connector, no ban. There's a philosophy or a saying that says, when a butterfly, is called a butterfly effect. It says when a butterfly deep down in Amazon, when it flings its wings, it affects a weather pattern in India or a den of lions. Ngamanye amagama, lokho kuncane okwenzayo ungakunyathi ngoba kune direct impact to your destiny. Okwesithathu ngifuna ukusho ukuthi, as Shakespeare says, ukuthi impilo is more like a stage. There's a cloud of people that are watching you. Khona abantu that have started EmpowaWorx as a receptionist and now are managers, because they realized ukuthi the world is a stage and I'm here to perform and perform to the best of my ability. Ukuthi kuko konke okwenzayo, as Martin Luther says. Martin Luther uthi, when it happens for you to be a street sweeper, sweep the street like Shakespeare writing a poetry, like Beethoven composed the music, like Michelangelo painting pictures. He said, sweep it so well so the host of heaven can pose and said, there lived a great street sweeper. Ngamanye amagama abantu basekhaya, I wish I'm closing now. Good. Kuko konke okwenzayo, do it with uttermost excellency. Give it your all, because you truly don't know who's watching you. Your future is in your hand. Are we all together, guys? You know, I remember among Sebens, I worked for an organization. There's this guy, Magavulis Kaftin on Monday, beg a complaint. And I knew it's peanut butter. You know, on Tuesday, we'll open his lunchbox. He will shout at the top of his voice and say, "Kitsibiregi peanut butter." His friend, one of his friends, then they called him and said, "Dominic, why don't you tell your wife to stop preparing you this lunchbox?" And Dominic said two things. He said, "My brother, look at you. You know, one, I don't have a wife, but secondly, I do my own lunchbox." And this guy says, "Dominic, you complaining about your own peanut butter?" And all I'm saying to you is that if you can't make it with all the information, with the support of Ausleys and Nedbank and other support and other sponsors, and they're here, they bring information. If you can't make it, whose peanut butter is that? Whose peanut butter is that? It's your own peanut butter. You know? There was a tsunami that happened, and then they were doing an RDP, not robbed, deceived, and persuaded, but a reconstruction and development program. But they don't realize that Bulelan, they don't have enough supply of monkeys. And then they went around by Kokas. They found this young man who's full of energy, aus Lizzie. But no retlo trainer, retlo aparisa, because we want to do some recreational activities and entertain kids. Ababula Zoo, this young man was there, as he was moving from one leaf to another. And Banaba, oh, Mama, we love this monkey move. But because this guy of excitement, as was about to grab the leaf, Bulelan, he missed the leaf, and then he fell on a den of lions. And remember, lions are not carnivores. I see the vegetarians, the lions. Sorry, I'm not herbivores. As the lion was moving, gracefully praying to God to say, "Lord, for the food that I'm about to enjoy." But because this guy is not trained to cry like a monkey, like a monkey. Before this guy could say, "Bamayo," the lion whispered, saying, Mamelan, sonke sizozama lana. It doesn't matter what we're doing. We are all here to hustle. But hustle kahle, and God bless you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. You know, when I was, and I think this part I didn't leave to anyone else, I think this particular tea, when I was thinking up speakers, right? So I did it of my own. But for me, it was to say it's the end of the year. It's a time of reflection and gratitude, number one. Number two, who do you bring on who would equally fit the task but also has done impactful stuff in impacting others. So I think for me, you know, having known you for so long, having hustled him years ago, coming to his office, always gave me an ear. Always a time for me. I just wanted to say from the bottom of my heart, and the thousands and thousands of young, amazing people, you know, who you've impacted and touched, thank you. You know, may you receive your flowers while you're still alive and not dead. May we not stand around your coffin one day and say, this man was great. But today, I think, representing many, many, many others, I say you've impacted our lives. You've changed so many of our lives. You've opened up financial opportunities for so many of us. And, you know, no better time as this than this time of the year, closing off the year, to say, as you go back home to reflect with your daughter, your family, your children, may you know that there are many others that you've touched. And you might not see us tweeting, you might not see us on Instagram or on Facebook all the time, but you've impacted our lives. And I think we're a sum total of Amakrotman who ate but didn't wipe their mouths, but left some crumbs for us to be able to come and take. So please just bring me the flowers. Bring me the flowers. Let's me. These are your flowers while you're still alive.
Thank you.
You know, as a representative of everyone who's here, we appreciate you, Hopman, very, very much. And may God increase. May He bless more. May you do more. May the 5,000 you've touched be 100,000, 100 million. And we thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir. Thank you. And all these amazing gifts are gifts. Oh, no. Please, in the center. Yeah, we need a picture. Our photographer, yeah. Yeah, he needs to get one as well.